This podcast is intended for an adult audience. Please be aware that some of the content discussed may be triggering. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Reach Out, the podcast, where we are dedicated to ending sexual violence through advocacy, counseling, education, and more. This is the official podcast of Reach Counseling, located in Northeast Wisconsin. You will learn more about the services we provide and hear from members of our team, sexual assault survivors, and the people who support them. We are so glad you're joining us today and would love to connect with you further. You can find out more about us by going to reachcounseling.com. The interview portion of this episode was recorded in May of 2023. Please keep this in mind when dates and timelines are referenced. This week's episode features an interview with Rachel Parbs, campus advocate at Reach Counseling. Rachel talks about her time as a prevention educator prior to becoming the campus advocate. She also shares her advice for someone who wants to get help after being sexually assaulted. Here is episode 9. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Before working at Reach, I would say my journey in the human services field started right out of high school. When I started college, I worked for a in-home care service for kiddos who are neurodivergent, and I did a lot of ABA therapy and stuff like that in home. After that, I started working with kids with some emotional, behavioral, and mental health struggles. I did that for about 2 years at a few different organizations, and I've been going to school for psychology. So when I found Reach Counseling, I thought it was kind of right in my wheelhouse and something I was really passionate about.
Awesome. You mentioned ABA therapy. Can you talk a little bit about what that is for people who might not know?
Yeah, definitely. So ABA therapy is applied behavioral analysis, and it's really well known for individuals who have autism, and working with them to kind of it's very, I would say, intense. So kind of just really structuring behaviors to how like we want their behaviors to look. So as like a professional and as a family, we would do a lot of correcting behaviors that were that we didn't like and we didn't want to see, just to kind of help the kiddo learn how to be a really active member of the community and to be able to be independent, because that's kind of the goal, is to learn independence and to really boost self-esteem. So help them understand kind of social cues and stuff like that.
Yeah. Excellent. Wow, thank you. That was a great explanation.
Yeah.
I know, so when I switched careers into education, there was all these acronyms and things that I was at my first training and I felt like I was drinking out of a water hose because I was jotting down all these acronyms look this up later. And so sometimes people throw them out and not everybody knows what it is. So thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't know what ABA therapy was until after I was done with that job. So I was
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think and sometimes people are just afraid to ask.
Yeah, so, definitely.
That's good. So what would you say you spend the bulk of your time doing here at Reach or around the community for Reach?
Yeah. So our time as prevention educators is split 50-50. It's kind of a unique role because we have an advocacy team, and the advocacy team spends quote unquote 100% of their time advocating for their clients who are victims, survivors of sexual violence. But as prevention educators, we split our time 50-50. So 50% of our time is working with those parents and kiddos who are survivors of sexual violence and working with them and being an advocate. And then the other 50% is being in schools and local community organizations and really working on that prevention component of our role. So teaching about, for kiddos, safe and unsafe touches. As we get into the high school, we really teach them the terms, the core terms, red flags to look out for, stuff like that.
What do you mean when you say core terms?
Core terms such as what exactly sexual assault is, what is sexual abuse, what is sexual contact, what is grooming. And grooming's a really big one.
Yeah. So when you're out and you're teaching and working with these children, do they have a lot of questions? Are they receptive to the teaching, or are they kind of quiet? What's usually the reception?
Middle schoolers have the most questions because they're very curious.
Right.
And I honestly like middle school, I would say is my favorite group to present to, which is odd. Because they just have so many questions. They're so engaged. It's all new information to them. So they're also learning the key terms. They're learning, what is sexual violence. They don't know much about it now, and then they're learning about it. So they have a lot of questions. High schoolers aren't extremely engaged, but then we also have a day 2 presentation for high school where we play Jeopardy, and they get really engaged in the Jeopardy. So
A little competitive there, and
yeah, exactly. And I would say the kiddos in elementary school usually don't have a whole lot of questions. They usually pretty much understand, but sometimes you get the really, really good questions. So for example, they'll ask something like, "Oh, is it okay, if my mom helps me with something?" They have really good questions, and I can't even think of a good one because it's like, wow, that's a really good question.
how do you do follow up? I know you said you have that second day with the high schoolers, but do what's kind of the return on the investment in doing this work?
Yeah. So we do it every single year. So every kid in at least Winnebago County as of right now has a presentation every single year of their schooling, which is awesome. So I guess we don't have that right away follow up, but there is that yearly follow up. The middle school also has a day 2, so their presentation is split up into 2 days. The school counselors all have our contact information, and a lot of them are really good about letting us know if there was a disclosure.
Okay, so you're finding out through school counselors if this was impactful and that there was, something that came out of it, tangibly came out of it. I mean, obviously, there's probably a ripple effect
Yeah.
that goes on. But so, kind of your call to action with the students is, hey, here's your guidance counselor. In case you didn't know, this is your guidance counselor. And if you feel that one of these things have been violated or that someone has abused you in some way, you can talk to this. This is a safe person to talk to, and you're like bridging that connection.
Yes.
That's what's happening. Okay.
Yes, and also with the high schoolers, especially, a lot of them, they're smart. They don't know, or they know that if they tell their school counselor, it's getting reported, and they don't want to report it.
Right.
So a lot of them will approach us with their disclosure, and we'll give them a business card discreetly. They don't want their friends to know. So we do let them know we're not a mandated reporter, and I think that's really comforting for the high schoolers. And then also, especially in the elementary school, and this is something that really surprised me when I started this job, is that elementary schoolers will disclose in front of all their peers. They
Oh,
will
wow.
say,
Yeah.
"Oh, something like that happened to me," and then they'll tell us about it. So then definitely we have that follow up. So
Yeah. And I think you mentioned parents too that you work with. So can you talk about that experience and relationship?
yeah, definitely. So parents, a lot of times, especially with the really young kiddos, there's not really a whole lot we can do like specifically for the kid. Like we can meet with them in the school day, which I do with most of my clients, meet with them and just, give them somebody to talk to. But a lot of times it's the parents who are making the appointments, are dealing with the stress, who obviously the kids, if it's happening to them, like they're very stressed out. Um, but the parents are processing all these emotions along with the kids, and so they need somebody to help them process, to help advocate for them.
Okay. So you're doing these presentations, you're in the schools, and then when you're back at Reach Counseling's office, what are you spending your time on?
I'm spending my time, there's always the paperwork. It's
Yeah.
human service field. It's kind of a given. Doing research definitely for my clients. Finding out different things that we can work on when we do have our one-on-one sessions. Definitely giving clients a call, checking in on them, scheduling appointments to meet with them. And then we always, I feel like there's little projects that we work on, like presentations and stuff. For example, earlier this year, I presented for a foster care training, and so we spent months working on that presentation. Yeah. So there's really a whole lot. It's kind of an interesting job because absolutely no day looks the same.
Wow. So is that how you get the clients that you work with, by going into the schools and then they're disclosing to you, and maybe they don't necessarily want to disclose to a mandated reporter, or they want to kind of process things with someone like yourself, an advocate, Is that kind of how you're getting your clients, or is it people also calling in, or how does that work?
For the most part, we've had just a lot of disclosures in the schools, but then also people do call Reach Counseling looking for help. And then also like sexual assault nurse exams, but a lot of times the sexual assault nurse exam clients are just kind of looking for that advocate in that moment, but aren't really looking for too much from us after that. But it really depends, because we can have clients that we keep after those exams for sure.
And you'd mentioned like later today you're going to meet with a client. And what does that entail? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So today, the client that I'm meeting with, we're really going to work on building self-esteem, learning social cues, and understanding how their trauma is affecting them on a day-to-day basis and what they can do to cope with that.
Okay. And do they typically work with one of the therapists here in conjunction with working with an advocate or educator, or is it just kind of varies?
Yeah, it really varies. Some of them already have counselors before they want to meet with us. Some of them are on the therapy wait list, or they meet with a therapist as of right now. This client specifically has their own therapist, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So they have, this additional help through you and advocacy and resources and all of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What's the most rewarding part of this job for you?
I would say the most rewarding part is being able to make an impact on my clients' lives and make them feel like their feelings are valid, and that they are strong, like really like hyping them up, making them feel like they are worthy of justice. The most rewarding moment I would say so far working here is I started working with a kiddo, and we were in their school, and they told me that they told all their friends that I'm their bodyguard. And it was literally so cute.
Because that's how they view you. That's how they see you.
Yes.
Them.
Yeah, definitely. And it was just, I was like, oh, wow, I am your bodyguard. So it was just, I don't know why, it was just such an impactful moment for me, but.
That is awesome. And what would you say? I mean, I know there's a lot of burnout in this field. What would you say are things you do on maybe a daily or weekly, monthly basis to self-care, or just make sure you have work and life balance? What do you do to prevent yourself from burning out?
Yeah, definitely. When I'm off work, I don't think about it, or I try not to. It's really hard in this job to. I'm a verbal processor personally. So when I get home from work, like I want to talk about my day, talk about what's been going on, but I can't realistically, because I need to keep my clients' information confidential. So that's like kind of, I would say, a real struggle, but also the Reach team is impeccable. Like I love all of my coworkers, and I've truly made really great friends here at Reach. And there's certain people that I work with that I know that I could call at any time, and they would have a conversation with me like about what's going on in my head, what's going on, the stuff that's going on with work, stuff like that. So I would say having those coworkers and peers to talk to. But then also, I like to take a good vacation. So,
What's your favorite place you ever traveled to?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Or one of them. It's hard to pick a favorite.
It is. I would like to say Colorado because it's gorgeous and there's mountains and the hiking. But I would say Florida, just because it's gorgeous. And warm. I love the beach. I'm a huge fan of the beach. So
you go and recharge and everything.
Yes.
What would you say is, like, in your mind, a way that Reach can grow or improve? Like, what would you like to see implemented 5-10 years from now, or built upon?
I would love to see the DEI mission to continue to be built upon, because I would say that we will never be done building an inclusive environment. And I think that Reach is the most inclusive place that I've ever worked. And for that, I love working at Reach, and I love learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think that it's just something that we, again, will never, it's not something you can perfect. So continue to build and to work as an organization.
Yeah, so it's not something that you just check off a list. Like, okay, we did these trainings, but that it's a continual continual thing that you build upon.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because there are places where it is a check mark. Oh, we did this training. We're done. We're good. But Reach definitely is not that way. It's a continual process, and I think it's really inspiring.
Yeah. And I imagine that's extremely beneficial to the client base too, because sexual assault does not impact just one type of person. It affects people across all genders, economic status, and ethnic background. Like it impacts people from all walks of life.
Yes,
So,
and it's our job to be informed about it because the client, there's no way that we can expect the client to teach us that, like, that's not a thing. So we need to make sure that we are informing ourselves. We are learning. Yeah, so continuing to, and I said that, like, a big part of my self-care is that I leave work at work, which has been kind of a struggle because I like to read about DEI stuff in my free time. It's what I enjoy reading about and to learning other people's stories. But sometimes I'll be reading and I'm like, oh man, like I need to take a break from this. But yeah, continuing to like educate ourselves.
Yeah. When you started your collegiate journey, and you said you were a psychology major, is that correct?
Well, I've actually gone through quite the collegiate journey.
Okay. Yeah. I guess what I want to ask before you get into it is, did you imagine that you'd be doing something like this? Or, okay, yeah, so let's talk about that journey if you don't mind.
Definitely not. So I started my journey, actually I started my college classes when I was in high school when I was a senior. I took all of my senior classes were at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And so I was going for speech. I wanted to be a speech therapist, so communication sciences and disorders. And it's funny because I was like, yeah, I want to work in a school because I just love working with kids. And no part of me imagined, like, maybe I should just be a teacher. So I started taking those classes, and then I realized I hate science. It's not for me. At least in the traditional sense. Like, I started taking physics of sound and music, and I was like, nah, this ain't for me. So then I switched my major to special education, and I loved special education. And then I transferred to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh because I wanted to live in a more diverse environment than Whitewater. So I enjoyed UW-Oshkosh a lot. But after my first semester at UW-Oshkosh, I switched my major from special education to psychology because I had spent all that time with the kiddos with special needs and with those mental health and behavioral struggles, and that's a lot. And I realized that I'm going to burn out quickly. So I switched to psychology because I wanted options, because ultimately I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I continued to go to school at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and then I got my job at Reach Counseling. It was actually kind of like a gamble applying because I really didn't think I was going to get it. And then I got it, and my confidence has been boosted immensely since I've started working here because I realized that I am very much qualified to work here.
Oh.
So then I decided to take a semester off so that way I could settle into the job, which I'm very happy that I did. And the next semester, I'm going to finish my degree at the University of Green Bay online.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so what will the actual degree be then?
Psychology. Yep. And then I believe that at Green Bay I kind of need to pick a minor. So I am bouncing kind of between urban studies and criminal justice.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great. Is there anything, if you could give any advice to, let's say, a 15-year-old out there who might be listening to this podcast and they have gone through sexual assault and not disclosed to anybody, is there any advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, that usually when you think about talking about your sexual assault, it seems very black and white. It's either I don't tell a single soul or I have to report it to the police. And being in high school, it's understandably so hard to want to report it to the police. But it's not black and white. So there are people you can talk to, like, that aren't mandated reporters, that you can just process those feelings with and that you can talk to about it. It's not a black and white thing. You can later down the road report it. It might be harder, but you can do it. It's possible. And you don't have to make all those decisions at once. So as hard as it is to talk about it, if you want to talk about it with somebody who isn't going to share it with anybody, definitely reach out to Reach or your local agency like ours and find out who isn't a mandated reporter, who you can talk to and process with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Yes.
Thank you for all that you do, too.
Oh, yeah, of
I've heard
course.
wonderful things about your work and presentations. I heard about the foster care presentation, how well that went. So thank you for all your time and energy and for taking the time to meet with me today. So
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for listening.
Every 73 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. You are not alone. Reach Counseling is here to help, and we're expanding our reach. Since 1976, we have offered our services throughout Winnebago County. We are pleased to now offer our services in Outagamie and Calumet counties as well. Reach Counseling is a sexual assault service provider for children and adults that offers culturally responsive outreach, prevention education, victim advocacy, trauma counseling, and sex offender treatment. As an anti-violence agency, we strive to heal lives and transform communities. Call our 24/7 helpline anytime at 920-722-8150. For more information, visit us at reachcounseling.com.